Hello, good evening. Welcome to Friday evening, another show. Myself, Chris Hughes from Rebound. I'm joined by Davo from Davo Basketball Stats Selection. Welcome, Dave. Hope you're well.
Hey Chris, how's it going?
Yeah, not too bad. Back to work from shielding, back into the routine and swing of things. I thought good time to get another show on the road. And I'd love for you to just, we sort of talked about the idea, and I feel it's a bit your baby, and you've done a really great thing for it. I won't go too much detail yet. It's obviously you'll talk to that time. Maybe just introduce what we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, so Chris suggested doing basically monthly awards. So I kind of gave it some thought about, maybe going beyond the kind of standard player of the month, coach of the month, or whatever, and giving it a bit more thought and going into a bit more depth in this format where we can kind of chat back and forth on it. So what we came up with was have an under 19 player of the month, a British player of the month, a team of the month, and then player of the month. And of course, this is all men's Division One, and we're including, because it's early in the season, we're including the Lynch Trophy as well. So I've gone through and combined the stats for Division One and the Lynch Trophy to see how those stats look when compared, and the win percentages combined for the teams as well. So we've got some shortlists, we've got some data, and we can really dig into it.
And also, just to a bit of context, and I looked at it, I thought, oh, there was one team there, so I thought, oh, they're not in it, but it's a 3 day minimum. It's an average, so they might play off, oh, he had an amazing game, but actually, if he had a bad game, it's not included. Like Dave said, we've got different categories. Should we kick it off, Dave, with the under 19s category? It started with a few names that impressed you.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to introduce first for some people who won't be aware. So when I look at kind of recognition and stuff like that through stats and numbers, I always use something that I invented called adjusted efficiency. So I think most people are familiar with efficiency by now, but if you've got two players on a similar efficiency, I would always want to factor in the team's win percentage. So players on winning teams should always get recognition for me. So I invented adjusted efficiency, which takes the individual's efficiency and multiplies it by the team's win percentage. So that's how I do my kind of rankings by numbers. That kind of gives you a short list, and then you can kind of discuss and talk around the kind of eye test and the games we've seen with those players. So it's quite an interesting starting point. So I had 5 players on the shortlist for under 19 player of the month. These guys have all had an adjusted efficiency of over 25, and their individual efficiency is all pretty much 15 plus. So at the top, to no one's surprise, is Cameron Hildreth on that stats ranking. Then we've got Blake Bowman, Veronese, Abiodun Adido. I'm not sure if I say that correctly, Chris.
Yeah. It's a bit a day do, but yes, it is a tongue twister. Definitely, but I think the longer he's playing, the more we don't know his name. I think because I think he's the one who's impressed me. I think it first came to my radar in that Lynch bubble. I know you said to yourself, you mentioned the Lynch games, and he really made an impact. So I think it all went down to the last game, didn't it? Really, with Worthing beating Barking to progress, but I think Barking, to their credit, made it so, but it was to the last game, the last possession almost, the last couple of minutes. And Abeda's number 7, part of a good team. I think he's really impressed me. I see he's averaging close to a double-double with 12.7 rebounds, but for me, it's the defensive side too that impresses me. Anything else you want to add about it, Dave? Just to say, I'm sure, of all the games you streamed live Basketball England, you might probably caught glimpses of the players.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing when you look at this kind of efficiency versus adjusted efficiency. So Cameron Hildreth has the highest efficiency in the entire league, which is incredible. But of course, Worthing are only a 400 team right now if you can combine their records. So as a sub 500 team, his efficiency wouldn't be risen as much by adjusted efficiency. So if he had a similar efficiency to the other names I'd mentioned, he'd actually come lower than them. But because his individual performance is so high, the next highest efficiency there is 18, and he's on 30, which is incredible. You don't see a lot of guys, with 30 efficiency, especially as an average. So he's so good individually that he's not dragged down by the team win percentage. And obviously it's early in the season for teams win percentages anyway. But I just wanted to really make the point that his individual performance is incredible. Leading the league in efficiency, leading the league in points, 32 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals with the combined across the 2 competitions. And I think, anyone who's watched the Worthing Thunder game has seen for their own eyes just how talented the kid he is.
yeah, they definitely play to his individual talent. He sort of is, leads the team out with the ball. And one thing that really impressed me was last season, even though it was his rookie season, he was the only player who, across the board, like we're seeing this season, sort of posting highs in points, rebounds, steals, blocks. I think he's the only player last season who got above 0.5 blocks, above 3 steals, above 5 assists, multiple rebounds and points. He was in league of his own. And obviously, shout out to him to making the GB 14-man squad. I don't know, you mentioned the other players, but did you want to mention a bit about the other players too, why they impressed you so far?
Yeah, I think Blake Bowman was someone I mentioned kind of pre-season, as I really thought after the season he had in EABL last season, and he was also a significant contributor for Derby last year. But I think he's really taken another step forward, as you'd expect, in his kind of third year of under-19. So I think he's really taken a step forward in Division 1 men, and he's going to be a big-time player. Veronese, he's got a leadership role on a very young team. He's leading that team. He's not necessarily the flashiest player, but I think he's the type of player that helps you win, and he makes the other players around him better. So really impressed with him as a young talent. As we discussed earlier, Adido I think is a serious talent as well. He brings. They need size on that roster, so he's got quite a big task. As one of their only bigs going up, obviously against grown men in Division 1 men. And just to add some historical context to Cameron's stats, just to finish that piece off. So he's saying he's averaging 30 efficiency this season. In league play only three players have ever averaged over 30 efficiency for the season. Hakeem Silla, that was actually last season for Thames Valley. Lionel Gaines for Worthing Thunder back in 16-17. And then way back, Adrian Fennin for Leeds Carnegie in 9-10. So,
Wow.
Obviously, it's early in the season. We don't know if he's going to keep that up for the whole time, but that's the kind of historical reference that gives the context of just how outstanding that is. And then similarly, he's averaging 32 points a game. The highest average in the history of Division 1 men in league play is Lionel Gaines again for Worthing Thunder with 32. So we're talking some kind of historic numbers here, which frames just what he's doing.
And I think it's scary too, just like you say, really at the start of the season, players are getting to know each other's games, and I think the best yet to come from him. I definitely agree with what you say about Abeardon. Like, I know when I watched the first game, I was doing an eye check team who's gone back with the physicality of likes of Sayer or Orlan, and Abeardon's definitely their guy. And Veron takes on too, but he's definitely adds the physicality and definitely aids him in his development. The last thing we knew this topic was coming up in the week, and I definitely have every name on there. I think one, but I think might just miss out is Sam Grant. I didn't know what you thought about his game. I think, me personally, I wasn't surprised. No disrespect to him. I think he's a great player, really top shooter. I think maybe I kind of thought if you did adjust efficiency, Reading 1-4 record would miss out there, but maybe also defensive end too. What's your opinion on Sam Grant? Because he's definitely one for the future and could be in the future.
I really like him as a player. As I say, Reading haven't had the best of starts in terms of their win-loss record. He's coming back from a long-term injury as well, I think, last season. So it's going to take him some time to get back to his best. But I think we see what he can do. And of course, in terms of we're talking under 19 recruitment. He's 6'8", he's got a great body, he's got a skill set, and he's coming out of a great system. So in terms of recruitment, he's going to be a very attractive prospect for colleges. I think as the season goes on, and he gets further away from that injury, he's going to start to impress and put probably better numbers. And I think Reading will get better and better this season as well. Alan Keene's teams always progress and get better as the season goes on. So I think they'll come together as a unit, and that will inflate everyone's stats as they go on. Yeah,
I feel like their 1-4 record needs to be taken a bit of pinch of salt because they've played 3 of the top 4. Men on there 7. Yeah, and they're not got many import players. Typically, the better players, possibly the players who sort of bring more to the team. And they were last season 7th seed. I think they only got one or 2 wins out of the top 4. So to have 1 win already on the board, that's pretty impressive against Worthing, and definitely one to look out for. One thing that I was looking for. Yeah, Karen.
So I was going to touch on the injuries again. Ben Dixon's been out, Latrell Maitland's been out. I think O'Shawn Williams missed the game as well. So I think when they're at full strength, they're a different team.
Definitely. Unfortunately, we won't see him this weekend. Their game is so has been called off. Obviously, for COVID reasons, I wish everyone who's affected well. One thing I noticed from the leaderboard, Blake Bowman, I've not particularly surprised, but he's got a lot of minutes this year. I think him and Charlie Brown having an increased role, and obviously they're a team that's been doing well this season. What's your thoughts about those two?
Yeah, I think Charlie Brown should actually be omitted from this because he's no longer an under 19. I don't think so. That's my mistake. He was just 19 when I ran off the figures. But yeah, I think Blake Bowman, like I say, he didn't get the same amount of minutes I don't think last season, so his production wasn't quite the same. And bear in mind that Derby have got a really strong roster this year as well. So like he's not been given those minutes. He's going to have to earn them. To get sort of obviously on 26 minutes a game on a strong team with some good talent. It shows that they believe in him and he's ready to contribute.
Yeah, I kind of would have. I think obviously we've seen early on they had Worthing versus Derby, and the Derby edged it. And even though, like you're saying, Cameron Hildreth's efficiency is really high, I have been really impressed by Blake. Equally, I was surprised, but the average efficiency was such a big gap. I kind of thought it was a bit closer. Like you say, Blake's competing with a lot of competitive guys, and I think. Whereas I feel Worthing are more play to Cameron Hildreth's strengths, whereas Blake is having to play to the team's strength, not disrespect even teams. I think when you watch Worthing, you can pick out Cameron Hildreth straight away, whereas if you watch Derby, you wouldn't pick out Blake Bowman straight away. And that's not disrespect to Blake Bowman, it's about they've got a lot of multiple weapons they're using, whereas the focal point of Worthing is Cameron, of course. I
think Derby played very much as a system team. I think Matt Shaw's an outstanding coach with a really quite a complicated system from what I've heard. Whereas I think Worthing are a bit more free flowing and they let Cameron have the ball and let him do his thing a lot of the time. So we don't have the kind of usage stat within our leagues, but if we did, Cameron Hildreth's usage would be very different to Blake. So, but Blake's he's making a lot of the touches and usage that he gets. So all credit to him.
And I know we've said this many times, I feel like this season, especially with COVID, there's a lot of college lads from America come back to UK play. I think it's a really talented league, and I think the guys who do well is even a bigger reward because actually it's even more competitive league. Are there guys who maybe when you were doing this you thought, oh, I'm surprised they're not in this under-19 thing, they've impressed me? Or has the people you think the usual suspect sort of got there this time?
Yeah, I think most of the names that I was expecting to come out in the discussion were kind of there when you looked at the numbers. There may be a few that have not quite made the list, but may make it later on as we get more games and more stats.
Yeah, it's been tricky. Obviously, some teams play more than others, but yeah, I think those are probably up there. I mean, there's others who've also. I don't want to make.
I think Flynn Boardman Raffert's a guy that's caught the eye for Barking Abbey as well. So he might be in there a little bit later on when his stats start to come around a little bit more.
He was the one that's just at the back of my tongue. I was about to say, but I was also cautious. Like I didn't want to say one or two because there's more than one or two. I had to go a few rosters, and a few teams haven't played any games because of COVID. But I think he's another one of injury. I think if he would have fit in that last game against Loughborough, I think, and Worthing, maybe he would be there too. But shout out to all the guys there. I think that we've done that the under-19s. Do you want to move on to the British?
Have we made our decision on the under-19s? So we're going to round it out and see who we got? I mean, I think it's got to be Cameron for me. I don't think the stats say it, the eye tests say it. I don't think most people would argue that he's the best under-19 player in the country, and his performance so far backs that up. So, under-19 player of the month, Cameron Hildreth for me.
Yeah, I can't. It'd be hard for me to argue that, especially with the stats and the eye test, like you say. Out of that list, maybe Blake Bowman a close second, but like you say, I think Cameron Hildreth, from what we've seen so far, as he put astronomical numbers and keeping Worthing in very tight games, even the ones they've lost. I think Cameron has been instrumental, maybe not the most instrumental, but he's been a key part in the reason why they've been competitive.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting debate is always that his team does sit under 500 currently if we combine in its trophy in Division 1 stats. So typically I would go with a team with a winning record, but as I say, the adjusted efficiency that I use balances that out. So if the individual's performance is so outstanding that it still sits at the top even with the adjusted efficiency, then I live with that.
Before we move on to the next one, we sort of touch a bit, and you say about winning, and I know we've been doing a team of a week, and sometimes that causes a stir. I pick a player on a losing side. How important do you feel, personally? I know people in the comments depend on their thing. What? Because I think no matter what we pick to choose, or some pick to choose, someone will be. But for you personally, if you were to pick a team of the week, what would be the most key things you'd look for?
So yeah, my thing is if it's player of the week, then it's got to be on a winning team.
Yeah,
But when you're talking about the best five players, I'd absolutely lean in that direction. But there has to be like a threshold. So if you've only got four players on winning teams that meet that kind of efficiency threshold, then I probably wouldn't go with a guy who's under that threshold just because he's on a winning team. I'd lean towards the guy who's actually way over that threshold. His team just didn't get the job done on that day. So that's how I kind of look at it. I wouldn't, to me, it's recognising outstanding performances. If a guy has had a fairly average performance on a winning team, I probably wouldn't put him in as the fifth guy. That's kind of my view on it.
yeah, and I think especially as the season shapes up, there's guys who are certain double doubles, and a double double for them maybe not as significant, especially if it's against a lesser opponent. I tend to feel like the strength of the opposition is really key to that, especially if it's a weak team and this one player has sort of kept them in the game. I think actually that's. I mean, there's an argument maybe could they've done it a different way, but if actually at the end of the day what they've done, what they've chosen to do has actually had that effect. It's tricky, though, because there's so many. I think it's a really good season this year, and I think the guys which we'll mention later on, I think are all candidates for Team of the Year. I think the guys who are playing well already. Which, for me, when I started the season, I thought, we've had COVID, we've had a pre-season tournament, we've had week to week about games. I was a bit worried about the level of competition, but I don't think that's a criticism of me, but it's definitely a competitive season.
Yeah, I think that one of the best examples I can think of off the top of my head of this kind of winning debate is if you look at like Jordan Santiago at Oakland's. So he's going to have an outstanding individual season, but it doesn't look like Oakland's are going to be on the winning side that often with the roster they've got. If they strengthen or they build as a team over the season, then great. But as things stand, certainly based, we're talking monthly, so we're talking about what we've seen so far. Oakland's I don't think have won a game off the top of my head, but Jordan Santiago's numbers are pretty impressive. So it seems harsh to just basically ignore him for the entire season if he's on the losing side most times out. So yeah, I think when you're talking team of the week, if you haven't got five guys on winning teams that are over a certain efficiency threshold, then why not look at guys that have had an outstanding performance on a losing team?
Yeah, and I say John Santiago made the team of the week last week for his impressive performance versus TBC. To watch that game on this channel, like and subscribe. I know Rupert's going to be live streaming probably the game of the weekend, TBC versus Hemel. That's a great game, and also TBC versus Red Rockets ladies. So back-to-back NBL and WNBL games. That's really a good one to watch. Yeah, for me too. Back of my head, I don't let the criticism bother me or people's opinions because I like that. I like the discussion. For me, I think the biggest plus, no matter what it is that it's a Wednesday or Thursday. We're still talking about last week because we're not the NBA. In the NBA, you have games every other game, and if you're a Solent fan, or let's say it's Solent or Worthing fan, you have a game Saturday, and you might have a game next weekend, but actually with COVID, you might not. So actually, it's really good as a product for us to be talking about it 3 or 4 days later when there's nothing on, and actually there's a fear but it might not be a game on next weekend, so it's keeping it on people's radar. So for me, it's positive. I always appreciate people's discussions. I develop my own knowledge, and for me, I think it was watching the TBC game, but I picked Santiago because I felt like I think there was a run, but TBC went like 40, and I thought, this is like a game over. And I'm almost guilty, apologies Rupert, to switching the channel, watching another game because there's 2 or 3 games at the same time. Turned back, and I had live stats one window, saw that Jordan was on the run, and then all of a sudden it's a 15-point game. I was like, okay, this is a performance to sort of shortlist, and Sunday evening probably have 10 performances to look at. And I really love doing this, and I say that's why I sort of pitched you the idea to do a monthly thing where we look at it, because I think actually it's more to say, and I think video's king. I'm not sure how many people read the features, they look at the graphic, that's great. But I think it's good to have a chat about it.
Yeah, I think
And
the
next,
other sorry, I think the
yeah,
other
carry on.
interesting part of that debate as well is if you take Jordan Santiago, if he was putting up really good points and stuff like that, but his efficiency was low, then I'd just say, well, that's empty stats. Someone's got to score on a losing team, right? But actually, to be efficient on a team that's outmatched in a lot of games, where you have a really high usage and you've got to do a lot for your team, that's quite hard. You're going to have to take some bad shots because the defensive focus is going to be on you from the other team. So I don't really, I'm not that excited about, the guys averaging 20 points, but a team's not winning. I'm not too worried. But if the efficiency's high, then I'm like, that's hard to do. It's hard to be, if you're on Solent, your efficiency is going to be great because you look at the quality of shots Solent get because they've got so many
Yeah,
threats and
yeah.
they have such a large winning margin in their games. But when you're up against it game in, game out with a roster that's struggling to compete at times, it's hard to be efficient. So I think that's another kind of thing to throw into the argument.
Yeah, apologies to Jordan Santiago. Not just picking you personally, it was just a big talking point last week to who to pick, and that was kind of a really good example for debate whether the players should for winning or losing teams. I think Jordan, like you say, that performance personified justifying I put us on a loser team. The next bit I love is we don't talk a bit about the British player of the month, because I think, especially this season, we've got a lot less imports than normally, and also typically year on year the teams of the year are imports just of the fact that they probably get in not in real times more because they either the scholarship or they're at institutions that did pay a bit more. I don't go into politics; every club's different, but it's good to actually look at the guys who are in the system year after year, and we'll also get to the other guys as a whole. I thought before you go to the top 10, were there maybe people who impressed you so far, Dave?
What, outside of the top 10 or from the list?
Yeah, yeah. So I put you on the
Um,
spot here.
yeah, sorry, I can't view outside of the list at the moment, unfortunately, with the setup we've got. So I'm limited to talking about the list we put
That's right.
together.
Don't talk. We'll talk about the list, then maybe come back to it after it's sort of think about play, think about supporting cast as
Yeah,
well.
so if we if we just reel off the list for the listeners, so again, ranked by adjusted efficiency, Cameron Hill is obviously top as we discussed before. Orlan Jackman, Kyle Jimenez, Blaine Freckleton, Oliver Stanley, Blake Bowman, who we discussed, Harrison Gamble, Brendan Okoronkwo, and Veron Easy. Those are all the guys that have got an adjusted efficiency of over 30 and are British, and three of them are in the under 19s we already discussed. So Cameron Hildress could do the double here. He could get under 19 player of the month and get British player of the month. So we need to decide if we're having a rule whether we're okay with the same guy winning both, or if you won one, you can't be eligible for the other. You as the host get to make that call, Chris.
I kind of think if you're playing a month, age doesn't matter. Like if you're playing a month and you're qualified, I think that's fine. Obviously, you'd hope there was a difference, but if actually we think at the end of it, Cameron Hildress best, I don't see an issue with that. I don't think we should be discriminated against Cameron's age if he's old enough, if he's good enough, he's young enough to be in the under 18s, young or old enough to be in the men's. So I
Yep.
thought we'd start it off. Obviously, last time we said Phil Easy, we sort of discussed him. I thought we'd talk about Brendan Okoronkwo. I think he doesn't always get maybe the praise he deserves, because maybe he's a team player, has a specific role in the thing. I'll start with you, because you obviously probably followed him for quite a while. What are your thoughts on Brendan?
Yeah, he's a Dave Owen basketball favourite. I like Brendan. I've followed the game for. I think he's one of those guys who's been in Division One for the entire time I've been following it. So you kind of have that affinity to guys that you watch year in year out. And I said on previous episodes, the guy's a winner. You can put him on any roster, and I feel like I haven't coached him, I haven't been in training, but I feel like he's the guy that as a coach you can just be like, this is what I need you to do to help me win, and that's what he'll do. So if he needs to be the top scorer, if he needs to be the best defender on the team, if he needs to rebound, if he needs to play the one, if he needs to be outmatched at the four, like he will just do whatever you want him to do. Like he's got such a wide range of skill set, he can do a little bit of everything. And like you say, he doesn't necessarily stand out in terms of like a highlight play and stuff like that. He doesn't always have real jump out numbers, but if you look at him year in year out, I'd be surprised if he's been on a team that's been under 500 or even not in title contention. He's always on winning teams, and that says probably the biggest thing you can say. If you look at a guy's career win percentage, that says a lot about you've got to be at a level to be recruited to a winning team. Put it like that. He wouldn't be on a roster of a winning team if he wasn't a good player. He just seems like a good character as well, from what I can tell. He's one of those guys that I imagine all of his teammates and his coaches would speak really highly of. I also look at age in terms of these things. Brendan's 29, and obviously the older you get, there's not that many guys that stick around in National League, particularly at Division 1 level, past 25. Once career and family and all those kind of things come in, the sacrifice you need to travel the entire country. It's a national league, truly national league. The training, the level of the training. It's a lot. It's a lot of getting home late.
Yeah, no, you had a little jump, but I heard what you said. It all came through fine. It was just a little. Well, we lost you now, so I caught what you're saying about the commitment and say how it was sort of. I totally agree, and I totally agree why we're talking about this segment. Because, like you say, when you get 25, we know the F word, the funding's not in British basketball to pay the guys the money in basketball, but credit to Brendan and other guys who sort of worked 4 or 5 day weeks, then train, then play. At the sacrifice, maybe not having that the social life, maybe other people their peer group have outside of basketball. So it's credit. For me, when I was opened the spreadsheet, I was expecting to see Brendan. For me, I know when I do my 2 weeks, him, Orlan, Blaine, always the players who sort of I feel like just miss out by one week or the other. And maybe certain guys it's more because of the fact they share the minutes. But they're definitely people who sort of like make the honourable mentions most weeks, if not just that one player below. So I think they've been playing really well. Going back to Brendan, mindset, I was watching, I think it was I forgot what it's called now. It was 2 ballers, 1 orange ball, 2 guys and 1 orange ball. And I sort of couldn't really believe in Brendan said it because but I kind of see from if you look at his CV, but actually he does truly believe this. And he said I remember him saying along the lines of, but he goes into every game thinking he can win. Like he doesn't go thinking he can lose. And I think it's almost a bit like how we saw that last dance, having that high level mindset is obviously done really well. And I'm not surprised him getting there. But obviously, one above him is Harrison Gamble. I think a similar player. What are your thoughts about Harrison, Dave?
Can you hear me okay? Because I lost connection there.
Yeah, I hear you.
Perfect. I had to quit and come back in. Obviously Harrison played for a number of years in the BBL with Riders, albeit limited minutes at that level. So you knew as soon as he dropped to Division 1, he's going to be a prime time player at that level with what he can do. And he's 6'10", which I think, and with a 3-point touch. So you don't get a lot of the players that fit that description in Division 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams adjust to having a match up with a 6'10" shooter. He's going to bring a lot to the Loughborough team. And I think, Loughborough obviously generally a university team, so having a 28-year-old vet with BBL experience, I think is going to really help that team.
Yeah,
I'm sure we're going to come on to another Loughborough player soon who I've been hyping up.
We are. We're waiting for a little bit, and you opened a really good debate the other week, which we'll get to. Obviously, we mentioned Blake Bowman, and we sort of talked about him in depth in the other category. Next to Oliver Stanley, I think he's a player who's very underrated. Give us a little brief, your thoughts on Oliver Stanley.
Yeah, he's another one I discussed before that, I've watched him season on season. The numbers just keep going up and keep getting better. And his role on the team grows with that. He's 26 now, so he's not a young player, sort of up and coming. He's proven he belongs in this league. He's nightly double threat. He brings a lot to the team. He's usually a little bit undersized for his position, even at Division 1 level. So it shows a lot of heart for him to be competing with some bigger, stronger guys. I know Derby like him. I know they like what he brings to the team, and it's just any guy that's. I'm assuming he's a Derby junior because I think he's been there forever. So it's always good to see guys again after that sort of 25 age where a lot of players sort of drop out at this level, it's great to see them not only playing Division One but playing, for the hometown club that they came through the junior system of. That's something I really like to see personally.
Yeah, I can't remember what game it was. It might have been there wasn't much. They won that one, but there was a game I thought he definitely made. I think he made like 14. He made like a massive amount of rebounds. Like you say, he's a double threat, like 11 points, almost 10 rebounds a game. So definitely been a threat. And I think with Derby, I think he's really vital this year more than ever. I think because like you say, Derby are such a strong team, but I think if you could say anything guilty about the majority score, it's that maybe they rely more on the likes of Malcolm Smith and understanding for the defensive work a lot more. If you've got a lot of 3-point shooters, I know Blake does play a part, but I think actually Oliver in that high level, that top six, is definitely one of those defenders that keeps them in the
I think
top six.
the big thing as well we're looking at the shortest of what we've got there, 9, 10 players. He's the only
Mm,
one averaging more than one block. And in fact, if you look at the
yeah,
league this season historically, there's not that many guys that average over one block, which is
no,
interesting. An interesting trend that I've noticed throughout British basketball. You look at the NBA and a lot of pro leagues, there'll be a lot of players. Some players will get up to sort of 2, even 3 blocks in the NBA. Obviously, they play 48 minutes, so it's slightly different. But yeah, it's a rare thing to see someone average over one block in the British leagues. So a shout
yeah,
out to them.
yeah. I mean, in the same sort of bracket as Hakeem see, try to think House is sort of might be there. Ron Easy's 0.7. He might increase that. Ronald, we'll talk about some other players later on from Newcastle and other clubs. They might be there, but like you say, year on, sort of be there, sort of blocking those shots. He's definitely a big figure. Um, and obviously, moving on, we've got about TBC guard, Blaine Freckleton. I think they're such a great team. I'm really excited to see that game tomorrow, but also just in general, I think they're going to be a very exciting team. What's your thoughts on them in terms of they built quite a British basketball roster, haven't they, really? I mean, they know Taylor Johnson, but it's a lot of guys who've been and done it before.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the backcourt of Lewis Champion and Blaine Freckleton. I'd probably go out on a limb and say, has there been a better British backcourt in the history of Division One? I don't know, but off the top of my head, I'd be surprised if there's been a better one. It'd be an interesting debate. If anyone's got that historical context, I might have a look through later. But that's a serious backcourt, and then they've got 2 Americans now. Is it Seth Hawley? I think his name is. It's come in
Yep,
very
Seth Hawley,
recently.
best of edge.
So, just in terms of when we talk about player and team a month later, neither Seth or Taylor Johnson are eligible because they've only played just sort of 1 or 2 games apiece due to injury, and Seth, only just coming in. So I'm sure later on in the season, looking at their early numbers, that certainly Taylor Johnson, we know what he can do, and Seth has made a strong start in his game. So I'm sure they'll be later just to say, that's why they're currently omitted. But yeah, Blaine Freckleton's another guy who's been around for the whole time I've been following it. 27 now in his prime, and we know what he can do. He can shoot as well as anyone in the league. That outside touch, and he's one of those kind of flamethrower guys that if he gets hot, you've got a problem, and it can last for a while. So it's always exciting. He plays with a lot of kind of energy, and you can see he's a guy that just loves the game. He enjoys playing. He's got a bit of intensity to his game. He plays with a bit of heart and hustle. So he's a player I like watching.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Seth Hawley. He's almost made the team, but when he's come off bench, he's not really had the minutes to prove himself. But I definitely think he's definitely one to watch out for. I've seen pictures of Taylor Johnson back in training, so maybe we'll see him this weekend. If you're Taylor Johnson, well, Coach Banks, you probably would want your best players out when you play against Hemel Storms. That'd be interesting. There was one player I noticed that I thought I was expecting to see it, but I haven't. Was Lewis Champion, and he's another flamethrower. I again talking about last time his teams went in Hemel Neil Lynch Trophy. His half court shot almost. It's hard to see with your camera angle. That was amazing. What
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that shot?
Yeah, that was just like what a way to kind of make your introduction to coming back to Division One. I think anyone who drops down from the BBL has probably got a little bit of hype behind them, and they maybe have a bit of a target on their back in some ways. But that's a hell of a way to just make it known that you're in the league and you're going to make a statement play like that. So it's a good start. I think Lewis, I don't know whether he'll be a 20+ scorer. I think Thames Valley have a lot of options. He's running the team from the point guard position. I think he'll do what ever is right for the team. I don't think he'll be looking for his own shot for the sake of looking for his own shot. He'll be trying to win first and foremost. So he'll probably have some games where he's got 10 points, but maybe has like 12 assists. And the game where they need him to cook, he'll go off for 25, could go off for 30, with his outside shooting and the way he can pick apart defenses. So it's going to be exciting to watch. But I'd say don't necessarily be swayed by the numbers with Lewis, because his impact on the team, they're unbeaten so far this season, right? So
Yeah.
that kind of says it all. So they're going to be a tough out with the players we mentioned already, and we'll obviously come to Hughes still later as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. Because I say I really love watching all your stats, and I think this year I've sort of appreciate it more. But like the stats don't tell the whole story. They do tell a good story, but you have to look at other stuff. And I'd be interested to see how the likes of, like, he does play a role for his team. How that corresponds. Just you mentioned as well, he got a lot of shoots with Hakeem Sia. He did more time spent hetero, off bench, and obviously Seth Hawley and Taylor Johnson will probably have a shooting load, and it's very difficult to have those numbers. But I do think TBC would be weak of that, so I'm interested to see how the season goes.
I'd
Not
expect
only how
all
his
of
stats.
their
Yep.
Sorry, I'd expect all their efficiency to be good, because it's the kind of Solent factor. If you're on a winning team with a lot of scoring options, then those guys are generally going to get good shots. They don't really have to force their shots and go one on one and create their own shots that much, because you've got so many threats. You're going to draw double teams and get some quality shots. So I'd expect the efficiency across the board for Thames Valley to be pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. I think also, like you say, like all those three teams offensively will score well, efficiency will do well. As defenders playing them, it's really tough to know who to guard. We already mentioned 3 or 4 guys, one team. If other guys will be hot on that day, and it's difficult to guard. As observer NBA as well, do you think it's fair to say out of those two teams, whoever has the best defense will be the biggest challenge of Solent, or do you think offense to be the biggest defense in terms of facing Solent and also I've going for second or first?
Yeah, I think it's interesting actually, because I think Thames Valley are all offense. I'm not saying they can't defend, but they really put up a lot of points. I think they play at a fast pace. They generally score over 100 points, which means they give up a lot more points than Solent do comparatively. Um, so yeah, I think Thames Valley are definitely an offense first team, whereas Solent's defense is. I wouldn't want to play against it. I wouldn't want to coach against it. Like, it's the way Matt Guyman prepares his teams. I think a lot of people have spoken about that in the past, and it shows. They are so well prepared. They know their matchups. They know their rotations. They're a tough team to play, and obviously a lot of their defense leads to easy offense as well. So we saw what Solent did last season, and I think it's going to be if they're going out all and Jackman, it's going to be, and it could be another unbeaten season. It's not a ridiculous suggestion to suggest they could be unbeaten again.
No, and obviously I'll add it LJ Russell, Luke
Yeah,
Basimbu, another British young player who I think with a full healthy season could definitely be making the British Player of the Month shortlist. But I think, like you mentioned before, it's sort of the teams with strong teams, a bit more depth. It is harder to make the inroads. So hats off to the guys who have sort of pushed the barrier in terms of the teams that are like Solent. Most guys average 16 points a game most nights, maybe 22 if they're in hot form. It's hard to get that efficiency up that high if you're only playing limited minutes.
I think what would be
And
interesting
obviously,
if you took someone like a Luke Sumbro and put him on like a sub 500 team and made him like the guy or one of the main guys on the team. Because I like Luke's game from what I've seen, but obviously he usually plays probably less than 20 minutes, 25 max off the bench in some games, depending on matchups and what's going on. But if it'd be interesting to see what he could do if he shouldered a bigger load and had a higher usage. I'm sure he's perfectly happy with his situation at Solent, but it's always interesting because we haven't seen him, at Division One level, play senior basketball prior to Solent. So he's one of those guys we've only really seen in the role that he's been in. But from what you see, you kind of suspect he could, put up bigger numbers in a bigger role on a team with a lower winning percentage.
yeah, and I think there was that thought bubble alongside watching the Loughborough, I think it was Leicester game, when the commentators made the claim about our next player. I'll let you introduce us. I just see you're itching to talk about this other Loughborough Riders guy, and I know you highly rate him.
Yeah. So Carl Jimenez, we're talking about, of course, for Loughborough because the numbers he's been putting up, triple doubles, the assists are insane. He's making a lot of noise. And it's interesting because like I saw bits and pieces of him last season, and as I've said before, I thought he was a two guard. I didn't really see him playing the one. Not that I didn't think he could, but I've just not seen him in that role. So seeing him, because I remember looking at the Loughborough roster at the start of the season and being like, oh, who's going to run the point guard? Because I didn't know the other guard that came in that well. But I mean, he's averaging 10.9 assists per game. He's getting triple doubles. It's some season he's having, and to touch on the kind of historical context that I always like to add in. So, like I say, he's averaging 10.9 assists per game, the highest average assists in the history that I've got. We can't say all time with Division One because we don't have the stats going all the way back. But from the stats I have, with the top guy was Vernon Teal at London Leopards in 11-12 with 8.6 assists. So again, obviously it's early days. It'd be some task to average 10 plus assists across the season, but with the start he's made, who knows if he can keep that up? He is running that team for the point guard position. Everything is happening through him. 11 points, 9 rebounds, 11 assists basically is what he's averaging. So that's very close to a triple double.
Yeah,
So yeah, whether he's going for the Russell Westbrook and trying to average a triple double for the season, I'm pretty confident that's never been done in Division One before.
no, I think that what really impressed me, I think it's the most recent game, and I was looking at the license I do when I watch it. I think the first quarter he raced like 8 assists. I'm like, wow, chill down, man. You got 3 quarters left. He was almost like doing all the other bits first, but going back to finish points at the end, which usually when you feel a stat picking, it's the Russell Westbrook and rebounds near the end, not the points. He's very sort of team player. And I did a poll, so with that, I had that sort of thought before. Like when I watch a player, like if they're part of a different team, how would they get on? And I think most of the basketball community, maybe a lot of the Loughborough guys voted, but I definitely think he's in the maybe top 25 players in the league. I think that's roughly whereabouts, but it's very interesting how he's got on this season because I think, like you said, I think he's made this big jump this season. I like it. It's like he's the biggest winner in almost so far in terms of Reece Pinnock going to Reading. I think Reece Pinnock's doing really well at Reading, but the whole is effort Loughborough, Carl Jimenez made the most of.
Yeah, I just think if I don't know, he might well have played point guard every season before last season. That was the only season I'd really seen anything of him. So he may have more experience than I realised. But making that adjustment from the two to the one, you would expect to take some time, and he'd find his feet within the system and all that. So to come out the gates averaging 10 assists is just crazy. And let's point out that Loughborough are a 700 plus team as well, so they're winning. Um, Again, on the combined records, just if anyone's looking at the league tables and wondering where the hell I'm talking about these win percentages, I've
Yeah,
combined the Lynch Trophy records and Division One trophies just to re-emphasise that.
yeah. Obviously, they Loughborough, I think, were 3-0 in the Lynch, but obviously, I think they've lost the Solent. I think they played Nottingham once, and I think they're 2-1 in the lead and 5-1 probably the second seed outside Solent 6-0. But yeah, no, I'm really interested to see what's next for Carl Jimenez. Just like you say, he's almost at the age where maybe, like you say, guys tend to drop off of British basketball. I'll be interested to see if he can do BBL or whether he goes to Sweden like a few of the other Leopard guys in the
Mm.
past, then or off to Europe somewhere. But I'm really interested to see how he gets on. And I think for me, like I think he's made the biggest impact because I mean, it's often we look at scoring and say, oh, this player's averaging 40 points, 30 points a game, player of the month. For me, I was like, I knew Cameron Hill would probably have a higher efficiency. I knew one or two others maybe also up there. But for me, I think Carl Jimenez was a close, almost like a photo finish, if you like, in terms of maybe more the eye test, more the how he's more a selfless player.
Mm.
But I think the next player was, again, another team player. Do you want to introduce the next one on the list, Dave?
Yeah, so in terms of the stats, we've got this guy ranked second in the British Player of the Month rankings that we've got based on adjusted efficiency, and it is, of course, Orlan Jackman. Sorry to make him feel old, but he's the oldest player on our list in Division 1 at 32. Obviously, what Orland's done with his pro career. He's one of the better British players in the BBL, so of course he's going to be an outstanding British player in Division One. Again, he's I'm sure at this stage of his career he's not coming in demanding to take X amount of shots or score X amount of points. I don't think he's ever been that kind of player, to be honest, at any level. But to come into a system like Solent and the environment that they have there, I'm sure he's probably enjoying the season as much as he's enjoyed any of his seasons in basketball. And he's coming in and playing whatever role they're asking for him. He's going to rebound the ball. He's going to score when he needs to. He's going to play really good D. So he's averaging 15.7 rebounds, 4 assists. That's quite nice across the board from the forward position. And obviously, with Solent, the stats don't generally jump out at you because they don't necessarily have to all play big minutes. That's in 24 minutes a game. He's putting up those numbers because they don't have to play all their guys 35 minutes plus to get a win. So yeah, I don't think anyone doubts what Orland can do in this league compared to what he's done in the BBL. I'm sure if he wanted to, he could probably average 30 and 10 in Division One if he wanted to. So I don't, and he obviously ranks second on this list. He's in the running for the player and team of the month overall. When you take away the British factor, he's still one of the best players in the league. So I think that says it all.
Yeah, and I think averaging actually 23.7 minutes probably on the upper scale things at Solent. I look at them quite often, and I think it's hard for players to get more than, if you look at it week to week, 22 tends to be the third or second player in the team. I know quite often it's either Ian Smith or Elliot Dad sort of get the 20 plus, maybe one other, but for him to consistently do it over 6 games as well, bear my Solent played quite a lot of games. That is something that jumps out to me. But Matt Diamond trusts him to do the role he's asked. Like you say, he's not coming on the team to prove anything. I think he's coming in to be part of the project, and maybe that project is to go one further with BBL Trophy. I always think it's quite scary when Solent say unfinished business. They said it before after they lost to Loughborough Riders National Cup, and then went on the rampage after that. He didn't respond well to losing at the big stage. So we'll have to see whether Orland still match up against the BBL. And I think its block percentage, just Solent last year, Travis Charles, I think, was a 0.6 or maybe 0.6 blocked. So actually this year, he's adding something a bit different to them in terms of on that defensive end, which I'm sure Matt Diamond's really relishing, because I think also Luke's actually averaged quite high, but that's part of the Solent game I've not seen actually in terms of rim protection. So that's been a good thing for them.
Unfortunately, we're seeing the 32-year-old Orland Jackman. Orland in his prime has some serious hops from what I've seen. So I think the dunks and blocks would have been a lot more spectacular if he played in Division One, 5 years ago. But of course, there's no reason for him to play in Division One 5 years ago. So he did his thing in the pro league. So I'm sure there's some highlights out there. I'm sure Hughes has got some stuff for those people who want to look what Orland Jackman with serious hops looked like back in the day.
I'm sure they'll be getting out the catalogue if him and Solent continue in the spirit. I'm sure, as we all want to see content out there. I love how you mentioned dunks. There's a few names you've not mentioned there, but I feel they've really impressed me. I think Ronald Abiria from Derby with his dunks. I think it's been a really exciting year in terms of either downtown shooters we mentioned with Lewis Champion, or dunk player, sort of Blake Bowman do a dunk. It's a very exciting year, and it's great to have it all on camera. And then also the last guy on the list, Cameron Hildreth. I think because he's on both and he's near the top of both. So for me, I feel like there's been times when he's played well, he's got the numbers, he hasn't got the efficiency, and either that's because of missing free throws or a few turnovers. But someone who looks at stats quite often, is that to be expected for someone who has so much of the ball and is on the court pretty much all the time? Is that sort of fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, he's averaged 35 minutes a game. His usage rate is probably got to be one of the highest in the league. So we don't have that stat. And he's 18. You can't expect consistent performance game in, game out at men's level at 18. What he's doing. He's like I say, he's leading the league in efficiency, leading the league in points. I'm sure the wins will come as Worthing Thunder's team comes together, and we've not taken into account strength of opposition. Obviously, this early in the season, if you played 5 games, some teams might have not played any of the best three teams in the league and stuff like that. So there's always those things all balance out as the season goes on and we get more stats. But Cameron is basically top of every list at the moment, or near enough there. And if you've got a list without his name on, you put together a very poor list, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I agree with you there. For me, I think if I was to sum up how Cameron Hildreth is a lead above everyone, it's when I watch the live stream games and he's on the court throughout the game. And then if you're not a streamer, it still pans on to the court during the half time. You can't see Cameron Hildreth on the court because that's the time at half time when he's actually having a rest. So all his teammates and the opposition are out there fine tuning. Young Killer Cam's just out there having his rest because that's his time out. And I think that really sums up how it's sort of peaches and pears. He is in the lead of his own. He's doing really well. Maybe even his average, like you say, the wins will come, the efficiency will come, and I'm sure he's bigger and better things. And obviously, how many players in the NBL from the South Coast and say, but they've been selected the 14-man for GB.
Yeah, I was just going to touch on that and say, let's not overlook that fact that he got the call up to GB men, and I'm sure impressed a few people in training at that level. And it's only going to help him to go away and spend a few days with that level of player. Obviously, I think he worked out with Luke Nelson over the summer, which was great to see. Two almost kind of similar style players in some ways, and both came through Worthing Thunder, I think, as well. So there's that kind of connection.
I think Luke was Reading, wasn't he? But he might have came out of Worthing,
but he started at Worthing, then went to Reading, possibly. I don't know off the top of my head. I think originally Worthing, maybe. But yeah, it's great to see that link up because I think from what I've seen, Luke Nelson is the future of that GB team at the age he is now, and he's already one of the best players on the GB team. He's playing at a really high level in Europe and doing some good things, and he's not even in his prime yet. So I think Luke's the future of the GB team, and then to see Cameron kind of coming in a few years behind him, he's surely going to be wearing a GB men's jersey for a long time to come, and that's really exciting to have two players that I'd say are not kind of typically British in like the way they play. They've got real kind of style and swagger and some flash to their ball handling and a way they can get their own shots. Like that's really exciting. I think that's why people love seeing highlights and love getting excited and getting hyped about these guys on social media because it's not just the fact that they're really good. It's not just the fact that they win. It's the fact that they play with a real style that makes people. Like, I'd pay money to watch both those guys.
Yeah, I would have paid a monthly subscription to watch the Instagram workouts between those two. You saw one-on-one scrimmages. You just see their similarities to the game, and I think that's where the debate comes. There's often debate about who's the best British prospect to come out, and obviously Luke Nelson won the MVP. We sort of touched on maybe as things stand, maybe Cam might not get MVP because he's not on a winning side per se currently. That could change. They got a more talented squad with Max, Sayer, and contributing bench parts to be a top 4 side. What, from your experience, what would Cam possibly need to do to A, become NBL MVP this season, and B, what are the sort of quantifiable things we just sort of debate? I hate to say like he's the but what are the quantifiable marks we should be looking at if people actually want to debate whether Luke Nelson or Cam Hildreth is the best player to come out of GB?
You can't really compare Luke Nelson and Cameron Hildreth till they both finish their careers. Is basically the answer because their age is so far apart that they're not at the same stage of their lives, let alone their career. So they'd have to finish their careers before we can see what they did at the professional level. It's hard to compare junior careers because I guess Luke Nelson played pre-EABL, so we wouldn't really have any junior stats on what he did. Obviously, we can compare the Division 1 numbers, but it's not necessarily the best way to compare players. I think at that level of player, you have to wait till the end of their career and see what they've done as a professional before I'd really want to have that conversation.
One of the things I thought is to sort of simplify my question. I think I overworded it a little bit. A lot of time when I hear or I see the chat, it's like, well, Luke Nelson or MVP, and I'm worried that like people are don't underwrite Cameron if he doesn't get MVP. But I kind of think a lot of external factors have to happen for him to get MVP. I don't think they're controllable, and I'm wondering
Mm.
whether you agree on that.
It's an interesting one because obviously the official Basketball England MVP award is done via coach vote. So we can advise what criteria they should use to make their selections, but you can't enforce that. You can't point to someone and say, well, you've selected that player, you haven't done it by the criteria, because how would you prove that? So
Yeah, yeah,
it's always a debate how you do the official awards. If you do it via vote, there's ways you can criticise that process if people are voting kind of strategically. So if I had a team that had an MVP candidate, would I use my vote on the other MVP candidates, or would I vote for someone who has no chance of winning it to help my guy out? I'm not saying people do
yeah, yeah,
that, but that's something you could do to kind of work the system a little bit to help your guy. So it's difficult, but do we do it on only stats? That's immediately going to come in for criticism as well. So those are basically your two options. You do it literally on numbers with no other consideration,
yep,
or you give it to the coaches to vote. And at the end of the day, those are the guys that see the games. They watch a lot more games. They're physically at the games. They've got to come up with strategies to match up against these guys. So
yeah,
it seems like that's the way I've advised we do it. That's the way we've done it. I could do it on stats, but I'm a stats man, and I'm still not comfortable with doing it just on stats because it
yeah,
doesn't
of
quite fit
course.
right with me. Particularly with efficiency, I like efficiency, but it does favour rebounding too heavily because there's no obviously you can make shots and you can miss shots, and those two things balance out. You can get assists, you can get
Yep,
turnovers, they balance out, but there's no counter to rebounds. There's no missed rebound stats. So if you don't really score much, but you don't turn over the ball, and you just rebound the hell out of the ball, your efficiency is going to look really, really good. So that's the flaw in that. Any kind of recognition, awards, analysis, that there's no right way of doing it, or everyone would do it that way. So there's always, like you say, with your team of the week, there's always going to be criticism no matter what way you do it, because the whole
oh
basketball
yeah,
community
no,
agree on one way. So, and then it's the same, with the end of the season wars. It's probably a little bit more intense with the end of the season wars because it's more, that's the pinnacle of the season, the biggest award of the season that means a lot. So it is difficult. It's one I struggle with every season, but I think the coach vote, you just have to trust them, to do the right thing and vote, with integrity. And maybe we should give them more guidance on the criteria we think they should be using as well.
yeah, I do agree. I think if you can't trust the coaches, who can trust them? I think for me, early long do rebound. I've learned, but if you put something out there, you got to be prepared for someone to say no, you're wrong, and I don't
Yeah,
mind that. Doesn't bother me more to touch back and actually say let someone actually wants to comment on something I'm doing. So actually, that's a win-win thing. It's interesting what you said because I didn't realise, but it was a coach thing. So actually, you know, we could see Tama be MVP, but we could also see other people. As at this point now, who's your British player of the month, Dave? We talked about all of them. Who for you is the player of the month?
yeah. So I'm going on the numbers, and again, the eye test, reels it out to me as Cameron Hildress as well. So he's my under 19 player of the month and my British player of the month because he's under 19 and he's British and he's putting up the best numbers. Again, despite being on an under 500 team, the numbers are right there and they're putting him above with the adjusted efficiency. So I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'm just about comfortable say Cameron Hill. If it's close, I definitely see Orland's efficiency, especially the fact he's doing less minutes than Cameron. And then I think Carl Jimenez and the way he gets there in terms of like you watch Cameron, he makes his shots. He does help the team. I'm not saying he's not a team player, but he gets there in a different way. And I think how Carl does Jimenez does it is a bit more risky. You're not relying on your team. If you're going for 10 assists a game, if you don't get your pass, you're not turnover there. And a lot
Yeah.
of his passes aren't just to the corner to Harrison or Jonas. They're
Mm.
inside the lane or they're a bit. But I do think actually maybe Cameron just tips it a bit in the scales, especially being on the team that's not a plus 500 team at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is where you get into semantics. If I'm doing my pure numbers on adjusted efficiency, it's Cam. He's at 42 adjusted efficiency. Orlan Jackman's on nearly 41 adjusted efficiency on an unbeaten team.
Yeah,
And he's the best British player statistically on the unbeaten team. So, you can certainly make that argument. And then Carl Jimenez is averaging nearly a triple double, again on a winning team that's got a better record than Worthing. So you can 100% make those arguments, and you pick any of those three guys, you're not wrong. So it's it's tough.
Precisely, and if you're watching and want to tell us what you think, by all means, comment on this video or come on Twitter. I love getting debate going. I think all these guys deserve that recognition. That's kind of why I started Rebound. I felt like I was watching NBL D1, and I just felt like there wasn't much out there. So obviously, continued conversation. It's all good and it's great. But we got basketball on, and hopefully that all continues. So moving on, we now introduce the import players and talk a bit more about the player and the team of the month. Did you?
Yeah.
I'll let you start off with the honourable mentions.
Yeah. So if we talk team, you might have to take over. My voice is gone. So yeah,
So we've got water today, haven't we? Being healthy.
Yeah, my throat's not great today. So yeah, team of the month. This is where obviously a lot of the players we've already mentioned come in, but then we bring in the imports as well. That don't fit into British under 19 categories. So we need to pick 5 guys for team of the month. I generally look, because positions are quite interchangeable in the NBL, I would go with 2 guards, 2 forwards, and then a wild card, like whatever. Basically, is how I generally look it. So there's a lot of candidates we can obviously talk about. So if we go, well, let's talk about guards first because there's less of them. So Ian Smith, Cameron Hildreth, Mike Williams, Carl Jimenez, and Jordan Santiago are the 3, 4, 5 guards that I've got in my contention.
Yep.
And they have all got either plus 40 adjust. Well, they've all got plus 20 efficiency, basically.
I think that's the hardest one in respect because I know Mike Williams interchangeably. I know I've called him guard times, and actually, yes, you'd see him play the forward role, but I said interchangeably. And you can't really pick team of the week or team of the month without including the under 19 and the British basketball. I guess you could if you don't think he's the player of the month. I think that's a big statement if we're
you could say that there's 2 import guards that are better than him. You can make that argument, but statistically, I've got him as my number 2 guard when you include everyone in the league. My top 2 statistically are Ian Smith and Cameron Hildreth for the 2 guard spots. So I'd go by the numbers. Obviously, you can make the argument for Mike Kyle we've discussed, and Jordan Santiago. Obviously, he's putting out really good numbers on a team that's struggling a little bit. To show Jordan Santiago some love in my historical context, so he's averaging 3.5 steals so far this season. And what we got, 4 players in the history of Division 1 have averaged over 3.5. Well, actually 2 players, because it's the same 2 players twice. Zaire Taylor and Trey Wilford, both in the last 2 seasons, interestingly. So,
and I think that's even better. But I think that's even better stat when you consider Oakland. I don't want to keep saying how the squad they are, but I feel like it's easier for a well-oiled Solent defense to get those 3 steals, but it's maybe an inexperienced side where you are. The Oakland squad, it's fair to say, it's a bit more depth in terms of people. It's if you look at Worthing, say, as a contrast, they probably have 7 set players.
Yeah.
The guys probably know each other, especially because it's actually a rerun of the 14-15 squad. But for me, I think when you look at a player like Jordan Santiago in the Oakland squad, I don't want to say that, but I think if you look at all the factors, actually 3.5 steals per game is quite good in terms of actually his team every turn. Again, you can look at it and say, okay, maybe his team would turn over more, so he's actually had more possession to defend, maybe, but actually still got to win possession. You probably having to guard the best player if you're the leader. So that is, yeah. But I think I agree with you. I think obviously Ian Smith and probably the Cameron Hildreth would be my 2. There is a player on here who you haven't mentioned at all, and I think maybe this is because of injury, but for me, a player I would probably have in there is Owen Williams, and for me, he's really impressed me in terms of. I think he was injured, so I think he's only played 2. I know he missed. I know he definitely missed 1 or 2 Lynch jump. He obviously missed a game recently, and he's another one we were talking about. Another player who will come out later. And actually, I think he's a similar boat in terms of the fact that he played a game recently. I think it was the Hemel game went off injured after 4 minutes. I think that may be why he's not in your list because he
Yeah,
was so much.
so yeah, he only played 4 minutes, so he might well have played 3+ minutes, but his averages would have been dragged down by that one game, unfortunately, which is the same case for Zaire Taylor.
Yeah. So if he was there, I probably would have. It's hard. I think if we're like month 3 and these the averages, maybe you'd get there. But I think Tam just pips him, and I think Ian and Tam are my
Yeah, I mean,
two guard
obviously,
picks.
we're only looking at sort of 5, 6 games. So if you have one game where you get injured after 4 minutes and have basically got zeros across the box score,
Yeah,
kills your averages at this point, which is unfortunate. But that is your true average, unfortunately. So we have to kind of make it comparable for everyone. Obviously, as the season goes on, those averages will round out with a bigger sample size. So those guys will come into play.
definitely. So we've agreed on 2 guards. Maybe we might have a third guard. Who makes your next pick? If it might be a guard or to be a forward, we both got the same names for versus.
Yeah, I think we do 2 forwards and we see what we've got
Yep,
left. Makes sense.
that
So
makes sense. Yeah.
number one guy statistically in terms of adjusted efficiency is Akeem Stiller because he's got an efficiency of 26 and he's on an unbeaten team, which puts him at 52 adjusted efficiency, which getting over 50 is pretty insane. Greg Polian at Hamill, Travis Charles at Solent, Orlan Jackman, we've discussed, Ricky Fetzker at Bradford, Ronald Blaine, new import at Newcastle, Jonas Dietrich at Loughborough, and then also Oliver Stanley at Derby, who we've discussed. So quite a few contenders. Again, the top 2, statistically speaking, Akeem Sidder and Greg Pope.
I'd like to talk about Ronald Blaine. I think, like for me, he's one who sort of just missed. He'd make my honourable mentions of my 6th man, and I think he's really impressed this season. Ganson is sort of averaging towards that one block, and he sort of says a little bit elusive in NBL. But I think for me, he's an exciting player to watch, explosive, a bit like a Luke Basimbro, sort of coast to coast, goes for the dunk, but can also shoot from range. Maybe sort of a slightly better than Luke from 3. I'm only going on for what I've seen. It's difficult. But he's one who's really impressed me, and I think he's going to be a. Initially, I thought I knew Neutral struggle merely on the fact that at that time I didn't know much about the squad, but I definitely think he makes him almost a top 6 side. I definitely see them doing something, but
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think as
I think
well, sort of Newcastle's win record across the 2 competitions is only 33%. But of course, they had
yeah,
1 or 2 Lynch games before they brought in sort of 3 imports, so
yeah,
they're a completely different roster immediately. So I think as those the imports came in late, so once they start to bed in, like you say, Ronald Blaine is good. I think is it David Moyer is one of the other imports,
well,
and
yeah,
then
it's the
there's
other
the
one, yeah,
Italian
and
guard as well.
Federici is it? Oh no,
That's
no,
the one, yeah,
sorry, team. Yep, no,
yes,
it's good, and obviously probably you know him more than I do. Charles Smith. Don't get
yeah.
much bigger than in British basketball having Charles Smith as part of your rotation.
Yeah, that's just a great story, isn't it? That will keep people interested in watching that team all season long, just to see Charles with the legendary status he has in this country. So, and credit to him because I'm only 36, and there's no way I could play Division One basketball even if I was good enough. So, he's only
Uh,
43. It's an incredible testament to his professionalism, looking after his body, and all that side of things to actually still be capable of doing it. I think the only other guys I can think of that have played, late. Mike Martin played into his 40s, another kind of BBL legend that dropped down, played for Westminster. Jason Swain might have played that late, possibly in National League. I think pretty sure he got up to
I'll
the
have a
40
look at
number.
that. I'm glad you're talking because I'm still. I think the 2 forward spots is difficult. I'm trying. I think I don't know if Travis Charles because I think,
I know you want to get your Solon, at least one of your Solon guys in there, don't you?
and I think actually in terms of the shooting efficiency, I think he's there. And yeah, of course, I I would almost have Mike Williams as one of my forwards because I just think he's or maybe I'd have him as a third option. Maybe I'll save him my third. Maybe I have a true forward.
I'd definitely
Um,
put him hard personally from what I've seen. He's definitely kind of
yeah,
primary ball handler.
I think
I think he's
I
running the
think
one last
too.
season. I think they've got Levi Noel in this season running the one,
That's it. Yeah,
but they've got a
yeah,
lot of guys that handle the ball. Bodie's playing off the ball quite a lot. He can obviously play the one, so they kind of got 3 guys.
I think I have to go for Ricky Fetchy actually. From what I've seen so far, I know the first 2 weeks he was very unfortunate not to make team of the week, and I
Mm.
really thought he was a focal point at Newcastle. But then, because of how I thought how good Newcastle were, but I saw how Bradford offensively were actually were better in parts. I think was down to Fexty, and he was shooting the free, baby hooks as well. He was doing a bit of everything and passing about, and it just looked a more cohesive offensive unit. I think a lot of that down was Fexty, but also maybe the other guys too. I don't want to not say that Margai was great defensively. They also had the perimeter defense of David Walsh and like Hughes, but for me, I thought Ricky Fexty probably just makes my team a month. So we both got one spot left. Who are you going for yours?
So I'm just saying, my two forwards are averaging a double-double.
Oh yeah,
Just saying.
I know,
Yeah,
but I just
yeah, Hakeem Siller and Greg Polian. I'm going on for the numbers and the double-doubles and the win records of their teams. But yeah, you can absolutely make the argument
my
for
guys aren't too
Travis
far.
Charles or Jackman. Yeah, you can make an argument for those guys for sure. And just while we're talking about Bradford, I don't think they get talked about enough. They must have set some kind of record in terms of the longevity of their roster. If you think Fetzker, Solks, Lang, who's one of the other guys that's been there
Margai
forever?
as well has been there a few
Yeah,
years.
he's been around a while. Yeah, yeah. So they just seem to keep the same unit together. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when those guys all sort of move on because they're all around a similar age group. Whether they can find similar level players in the area to play Division One. I hope Bradford stays as a long lasting franchise in Division One with their history. But it's always tough at that level when you've got a kind of core group of guys that are similar age because they're all basically going to stop playing at a similar time. Then all of a sudden you've got your four key roster spots that you've got to fill outside of imports that you can bring in. You've got to have a core group of local guys to come in and play at that level.
Yeah, and that squad got a bit bigger, didn't it? Because obviously they benefited from Liverpool's going out D2. They cherry picked 2 or 3 guys from there who are sort of similar age group. It adds to the competition, I guess. Yeah, try to pick who to be the third person. I think.
So what have I got? I've got Ian Smith, Cam Hildress,
Yep.
King Silver, Greg Polian. Yeah, I'd find it hard not to pick Carl Jimenez. I think it just seems
Yeah, that's
harsh.
what I'm thinking.
He's been left out of everything so far. Like we've had so
I
many
know.
conversations about him and what he's doing
Yep.
and the near triple double. That
Yep.
I think he was the one. Once we picked our two guards, I was like, hold on, am I not going to give Carl anything in this month?
Yeah.
So yeah, and just because if you do on pure efficiency, you're always going to give an advantage to the forward because of the rebound factor that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think guards sometimes get a little bit kind of pushed out when you're looking at pure efficiency. So yeah, give me Ian Smith, Cam Hildress, Carl Jimenez. I mean, I don't know who's running the point guard in that lineup, but
You have to share it. I'm not sure.
I don't have to coach the team. I just have to pick this team, so that's fine. So yeah, I'd give me Ian Smith, Cam Hildress, Carl Jimenez, Akeem Siller, and Greg Polian. That's my 5.
And I would sort Ian Smith, Cameron Hildreth. Oh, quite similar. Carl Jimenez, Travis Charles, Ricky Fexty, maybe Mike Williams, my 6th man off the bench. I think that'd be my honourable mention there.
It also seems harsh leaving all out as well.
I know, that's what I mean. I didn't bank that shit. I know, that's what I mean. That's what's so good about this leadership. There are something, and maybe be a bit harsh to leave out Andre Russell or
Yeah.
and
I have to say, in terms of players who have just simply caught my eye this season from watching games, I really like Andre Aerosol. I think I mentioned before, obviously, I've seen him as a junior before he went to the States. Once people go to America, I follow the stats, but obviously can't generally see a lot of video unless, Hoops is kind of posting highlights and stuff. But I tend to like to watch people over full game more than highlights to get a feel for them. So, yeah, I was really intrigued to see what role he had with Solent and kind of what he'd added to his game since he was junior. I've been really, really impressed. I love the energy. Really gets into people defensively. He's had some games where he's really caught fire from 3. I've seen him drive effectively. I'm sure he could probably run the one a little bit and run the team if needs be as well with his skill set. So yeah, I really like him. So I'm interested to see where he goes with his career because he'll be 22, 23-ish now if he's just left college.
22, yeah.
So interesting to see what those kind of next steps will be.
And I think if people didn't know his name, I think everyone knew his name and that L Lynch trophy against Worthing. He was literally Mr. Cameron Hildreth's shadow for the whole game. I
Yeah,
think he made
I
him,
don't. I think
like
you're not. Sorry, but you're not going
yeah,
to get on
carry
that
on, it's all
circle
right.
unless you can really guard people, are you? I don't think Matt's going to put anyone in his rotation who can't knock a guy down. So, they really know they've got to give it. They're all at the defensive end to get minutes on that team. So he fits right into that kind of Solent mold, I think. There.
Yeah, obviously, missed out Greg Polian, missed out, like you say, all that. O'Shea Williams, who was injured. We haven't even mentioned Sire Taylor, who,
Yeah.
I was kind of earmarked for my player of the month, but you
Mm,
reminded me why he didn't make that short
yeah.
list because of his performance against Derby, where he was on for 9 minutes and got fouled out. But there's a
I
lot of
mean,
big
like I say,
performances.
it seems harsh, but like I say, it's you're starting to manipulate the stats a bit if you take those games out. So let's just say those guys are going to get their kind of recognition later in the season once that kind of anomaly has kind of moved forward and kind of been drained out of their stats, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we had to have that non-meeting because of the fact that a lot of teams haven't played games because of COVID. So you could just like play the 14th seed and get 40 points, and then we'd have to discuss them on our player of the month. It might be a little bit unfair when player X has played 4 games consistently at a high level. And I think we're not saying they're not a good player, but they'll probably get their moment later on, like you said.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you talk about the games that you've seen, Zaire Taylor and O'Shawn Williams in the conversation for the best players in the league, absolutely. No one's going to question that. Unfortunately, statistically speaking, they've had those two anomalies where they've had a game where they barely played and it's kind of zeroed out the stats for that game and it hurts the averages, but that'll kind of work itself out in time. It's tempting to just remove those games because they're obviously not representative of their performance, but it is what it is at this point.
So, just from that, and then obviously just looking at the guys, are you doing Cameron Hill with the three-peat or not three-peat, sorry, all the plaudits, or who's your player of the month?
Uh, See, on the other ones, he was top of my list for the numbers.
Yeah,
So, and I couldn't make a strong enough argument to not pick him. On the list of everyone, he's only fifth on the numbers because the teams above him are either unbeaten or like Hemelstorm at like 800. So,
yeah,
yeah, for me, it's between Hakeem Siller and Ian Smith. Those are your two unbeaten teams, right?
yep,
Hakeem's got the numbers, he's got the efficiency over him, but like I say, the rebounding does weigh heavily on that. Ian Smith as the guard his efficiency is pretty close anyway. I mean, Akeem's efficiency is 26, Ian's is 24.7. You're
yeah,
looking at 19 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. That's doing everything for Silla. And then Ian Smith 16, 6 and 8 with nearly 2 steals. These are the kind of conversations that are tough because they're both unbeaten teams. They've got very different roles, so their stats are not really comparable. One's a forward who just rebounds everything and just destroys teams inside. Ian Smith runs the show. Solent have more depth, so Ian Smith doesn't need to play as much. He's at 27.1 minutes, and Akeem's only at 30.7.
yeah.
So I'm going to let you discuss it, and then I'll see if that leans me with what you say, because it's a real tough
I
one.
think that's
And obviously,
fair.
there's other
I
guys in.
usually, yeah, I definitely see the argument for both of those. I think it may be way towards Hakeem because that lovely 1.5 block percentage. I try to think who they played because I know on top of my head, TBC L Lynch obviously played all three. That's Hemel,
Yeah,
Reading,
sorry.
Oaklands.
Thames Valley have
So
only
that,
played 4 games, Solent have played 6 games.
yeah,
So a bigger sample size, I'm probably leaning towards Ian Smith now.
that's what I was about to say. And also, I'm thinking about Oakland's that game. I think they just lost Evan Walsh, or they might have had him that game.
Mm.
But either way, I don't think Oakland's with a team I've seen the last few weeks. Same with Reading. O'Shea Williams, if he was playing up, I think a lot of his performance were the early part. I'd say it's that's why I was hard when we were on this show tonight. I thought we're either going to be praising Solent lot to say the team has played 6, or Loughborough because they played 7. It's only one of these L Lynch Trophy teams with a 3-0 record and don't blitz it. Maybe that's fair because obviously you only do what you're playing, and obviously COVID sort of not affected the Midlands and South as much. But from what we've seen, I think Ian Smith. I wasn't expecting Ian Smith or any Stone player to average 27 minutes for 6 games, just purely because they've not, other than Elliott Centres, they've not lost anyone, and even then, guys who average 23, 24. You added Orlan, added an improved Jonathan Lashley, who, when we were talking about Stone, I was trying to want to say, because I feel like when I look at your stats, there's a big case that actually he's probably the most underrated player in terms of like efficiency per minute or points a minute. He's definitely when he comes on the court, he's a key contributor. But I think
like sorry again, butting in.
Yeah, no, right.
So what would be really interesting is if you took Solent's like bench 5 and put them as a team in the league and saw what kind of record they would have. It'd be interesting to see what record the team had, but it'd also be interesting to see what the likes of Basumbu and Lashley and Aerosol, who I guess would, I don't know, he's starting sometimes, not starting sometimes. So I don't know.
He's pushing one of the slots off, but I think Dad's made way for him in last year, but typically it's Dad's.
So because their depth is insane, and as I say, it would be interesting to see whether their second 5, obviously you'd have to give them some depth, but you know what I'm saying, if you took that second 5 as a team, as a unit, whether they'd be like a plus 500 team that could make the playoffs, because the starting 5 is so good. I'm sure the zone in practices are pretty interesting actually if they run the starters against the bench, but those are some good games. Seeing what kind of numbers those guys would put up in bigger roles and see how that team would perform would be a really interesting hypothetical.
Yeah, I think on the basis of the numbers, I'd go for Ian Smith, but pre-show, I was inside Taylor, but obviously what we were saying, or Carl Jimenez, I just felt like if you talk about impact, and I think there's been a lot of buzz with Carl Jimenez performance, whereas maybe it's hard for Ian Smith to have a buzz with sports because they are the champions, he is the MVP. And I was trying to think, but I think from your list, I was thinking, like Orland as well. He's sort of good impact. Mike Williams, I think, was the closest one I thought in my head in terms of like running the show. Greg, for me, whenever I talk about him or Mike and Greg, I feel Mike is he makes his own shot, but Greg is much more quietly about it. He does it more efficiently, whereas Mike will go for that 3-quarter buzzer beat or downtown, or he'll keep going, that sort of Kobe effect. And both have been great, but I think just of what we've seen, 100% record, I think Ian Smith probably just tops it from that list. But if we weren't going that list, I'd probably have said Sire, which people know as I'm a Solent fan, that takes a lot for me to say. But for me, I think I do want to say so because I feel like we can't do a show about not towards Sire. For me, the game just BA London Lions, I felt like I thought they were out. I thought Barty had it, but Sire had a little break, came back on, ran the show, and he did that 2-3 other games. And I thought, okay, this player but can step up, because I think a lot of people would look at Sire and say, okay, Cam's take all the numbers, what can you do? But I'm sure you and I, we both know Sire to still from the highest level. I feel like he took it above it because it was like at the end of the game, people were tired, but he still did it. So for me, I also put him as like my player of the month. But obviously, in terms of the shortlist I was offered, I'd probably have to go with Ian Smith.
Yeah, I think Zaire gets and who was the other guy that missed out? Sean Williams. I think those guys just kind of get an asterisk mention because we know they're absolutely in the running without that anomaly. So I think if you're going Ian Smith, I'll go Hakeem Siller because I think both those guys deserve recognition.
I think that's fair.
If you're going one, I'll go the other. That seems fair to me. So should we do a quick recap? So our player of the month, I've got Hakeem Siller. You've got
Ian Smith.
And our team of the month, if we can remember, I've got Ian Smith, Cameron Hildreth, Hakeem Siller, Greg Polian, and Kyle Jimenez.
And I went for, I believe, Ian Smith, Cameron Hildreth, Kyle Jimenez, Travis Charles, and Ricky Fexley.
Yeah, that sounds right. And our British player of the month, did we both go with Cameron?
We did, I think,
And we gave him under 19 for the month as well.
We did, yep.
Okay. I think we're good then.
Very good. As always, Dave, thanks for coming on. Thanks for being a great guest. I've really enjoyed tonight. It was kind of the content I wanted. It, it's a bit light-hearted. It was but also quite in depth and looking at things and evoking debates. Discussion. I hope people watch it have a better understanding of maybe the players who've done so well this year, month, and obviously deserve that recognition. Thanks for coming on, and thanks again for being a great guest and everything you do for British basketball. I've said it many times that my content's not what my content is without your stats. Like I'm always, if I want to do a show, it's a day own stat, or if it's a rebound blog, it's a day own stat, or if it's just something I'm browsing it's usually a day own stat. So thank you very much for
Yeah.
all your time.
I think that's the thing that probably over the last year I've realised that actually the biggest thing for my brand and what I do is for content creators. Obviously I want to promote the game in general, I want fans to engage and all that kind of thing, but content creators need information. That's the main driver of everything you do, whether it's written content or graphics or whatever it is. The more information you can get your hands on, particularly, I think kind of my USP, if you like, is the kind of player history element that, I'm the only place that brings together an entire player's history domestically, college, overseas, national team.
Yeah,
It's all in one place on the player profile. So I think, if you do the media for a Division One team and you sign a British player, then you've immediately got all their history, what position they play, their height and their age, all that kind of basic information. That's not always the easiest to find when you're trying to write something up at the last minute for a deadline, and you need that platform that's got it all in one place, really simple for you. So I think any content creators out there that are not aware of the website, make use of it. If you need anything that isn't on the website, just drop me a message, because there's a world of information in my Dropbox that's not made it onto the website yet. And I'm always, I'm here to help other people create British basketball content. I want to be the driving force that picks up the level of our content, makes it more informed. Makes it better, gives people the opportunity to do different content rather than the same old. So yeah, reach out to me if you need any information, data, stats, or historical context, anything like that. I'm always willing to help.
I think it's like historical content that really helps me. I say I've come to basketball late. I'm not someone who's been in the academies or watched it all my life. I've come in the last 3 or 4 years, so for me, it definitely gave me a bit of a background and motivated me to want to do more. So again, thank you for coming on, and I'm sure you'll be back on again, either maybe next month we'll do this again, or we'll do something different. I like to spruce it up and sort of keep it interesting. I think if I do the same thing too often, people lose interest. But thank you for coming on. Thank you for all the hard work you've done. That's to say, like I came in with my mind of players, but Dave Owen I got a stat sheet to the left of me. He's got the win percentages just officially games are played, minutes, points, rebounds, assists, steal, block. I thought I'd have another window open, but I didn't need it. So thank you very much, Dave, and have a lovely evening. And hope you're all well, everyone watching, and let's hope we all enjoy a great weekend of games.
Yep, good to speak, Chris. Enjoyed this. Let's do it again.